wanted to tell you guys a little bit about how magical animals are. And what I want to do is actually share with you my very first experience communicating telepathically, telempathically, spiritually with animals. Well, when I say spiritually, of course, I started spiritually connecting with animals the second I shot out of the womb, I'm sure. But I mean the spiritual language of communicating with animals in a way that is detailed and evidential, and in a way that does help us to understand the fullness of who they are, which is something that we can feel. Indeed, absolutely. Those of us who love animals can feel this. The thing is that we are conditioned to use verbal language so much in society, and we are so conditioned all throughout our education as a kid to say that it's only real if it has been spoken, if it's something that mom said, if it's something that teacher said, if it's something that is verbalized and vocalized, then that's the only way we can know it for sure. So this is the experience with animal communication, with being able to have evidential and detailed communication with animals. You actually get confirmed what you deeply feel about your animals, and you actually learn a lot too. My cats and my birds and all of my animals and all of your animals, everyone who I have sessions with, surprise me all the time. I actually wanted to tell you guys my first experience having the detailed and evidential communication with an animal, with telepathic interspecies communication. I experienced my awakening, a metaphysical awakening or a spiritual awakening, which meant opening up to some abilities and some insights and a way of being that I had put filters on so that I didn't connect with it, previously. And my awakening consisted of learning that I was an empath. And I learned that by having one 15-minute appointment with a psychic. And subsequently started just doing some seeking on my own. And then I got into some coaching to learn how to be a healthy empath, because I had been an unhealthy empath up to then. And so as I was getting that spiritual hygiene going, I was also starting to develop a meditation practice, which I didn't actually even quite realize, but it was just happening in this coaching. We were accessing that subconscious intuitive mind. And I had these sessions with my coach. And in our very last session together, we were working together and actually working in my sacral chakra area, asking my sacral chakra questions. And she kept saying, I know there's something else. I know there's something else we're supposed to uncover here. I can feel it. So I had actually started this final session by talking about my concern for a feral cat that I had been caring for on my back porch. And the fact that, her name is Helen, and the fact that Helen was pregnant and spending a lot more time on my porch than she ever had. And I wasn't sure if I was meant to intervene and, take her to, trap her humanely and take her to the hospital to have that pregnancy terminated. Now, this has nothing to do with my feelings. This is not about abortion or that at all. And so far as humans are concerned, that's not what I'm talking about. But I didn't know, how am I supposed to make that decision for an animal or not? And of course, I have a cat rescuer who's telling me, you have no idea how hard it is for feral cats, and they have those babies, and then they're going to just continue the overpopulation, and it's a terrible, difficult life. And my husband's like, who, by the way, again, I just have to mention, this does not align with what he necessarily thinks about for humans and politics, more about intervening in an animal's life in such a dramatic way. He's like, I'm not sure. Are we supposed to do that? Are we supposed to terminate her babies? It's one thing to get her medical intervention for something else that will clearly save her life, but are we supposed to do that? And I was like, I don't know. So this is what I was talking to my coach about in this final session. She's like, so what do you see now? So we're basically in a trance kind of visualizing stage, and I'm telling her I see a little girl, and she's in an Easter dress, and she's singing and dancing and playing, and she can talk to animals. And Caroline stops me and says, that's it. That's what we're supposed to uncover. Your gift of being able to communicate with animals. You're that little girl. And girls and boys here. If you remember what it's like to be a newbie, or you're a newbie as we call it. I was like, no, I don't know what that means. Yeah, right. how could anyone talk to animals, let alone, now, actually, I take it back. I had appointments, a few appointments with an animal communicator before, as my cat was passing away, transitioning. And I was actually stunned because she did come through with evidence that she couldn't have known, that I actually barely knew myself. So I had the door cracked open to it, but I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, that was a woman who had been a vet tech for 25 years, and I don't know how she's doing it. And so anyway, Carlene says, you need to uncover that gift for yourself. And when we're finished with the session, go talk to Helen, this feral cat who's pregnant, and talk to her about what you should do. Okay, whatever. So we finish our session, and I go out to near the back door where Helen is always hanging out, and she was actually on the porch. And I stayed inside, but I could see her, and, you know, she actually would make eye contact with me. So she was already starting to kind of tame, even though she's a feral cat. And I just reached out to her. Just with my mind, I just reached out to her. And I could very clearly, in my feeling space, you know, just having come off of this deeply trance-like spiritual experience of attuning my energy center, my chakras and everything, and asking them for profound insight. And I reached out to Helen, and I could hear very clearly a sort of, what I say, a literary voice that was not my own. And if I had gone into that with expectations or bias, the expectations or bias, I would have liked for Helen to say to me, yo, I got this. Don't intervene. I love babies. You know, I want to have these babies, and we're going to be wonderful, and we're going to make friends with a cartoon owl, and we're going to sing songs, and it's going to be a zippity-doo-dah day. That's not what Helen said. Helen said to me, again, with this voice that was brand new, and it felt different than voices that I run on my own. She said to me, I can't have these babies. And I'm like, okay, well, let me tell you what the options are. Again, I'm communicating this to her in my mind, telepathically. And I said, so these are the options. I'm going to trap you and take you to the hospital. And I'm kind of like picturing what it is and picturing what it feels like to be at the hospital. And I tell her that, you know, that she'll go basically unconscious, that they'll take care of the babies and they will take care of her. She'll be sore and it will be an unpleasant experience, but she should be fine. And that when she comes out of that experience, she'll be sore again. She's gonna feel weird, and she's gonna have some pain to recover from, but she'll be able to live her life without having to have babies anymore. And I actually had already trapped, spayed, and released another cat, and they knew each other. And so I referred to this cat. I was like, you can live your life like Marisol, who's this other cat. By the way, who is this little girl who's been crying through the door. Marisol is her mother. And so I said, you can live like Marisol and you don't have to have babies anymore. So Helen replies to me, I hear very clearly again, I can't have these babies. I can't have these babies. I don't want to go to the hospital. And I don't want to have babies anymore. I would like to live like Marisol. And so I was like, well, you know what, sweetheart? The going to the hospital is pretty much non-negotiable, because I'm going to continue to try and trap you, even if you have these babies, and I'm going to get you spayed. It's, shorthanding it. I'm kind of lengthening it for humans right now. And I'm going to get you spayed. So if the hospital part is your sticking point, well, that's non-negotiable anyway, because that's something I'm going to do, because I don't want to see this happen to you anymore. And so we left it at that. So the next day or a day or two after, I can't remember, whenever it was, I could know that I could take her right into the hospital. I put out the trap. I tell you, I've been trying to trap this kitty for at least a year, but she just wouldn't trap. So I put out the trap the next day, and she trapped within 45 minutes. I took her to the hospital, and the procedure was successful. The doctors told me afterward that she had 3 babies in her, and that one of them was lodged in her. A baby was lodged in her birth canal, and it wasn't going to make it out. And her going into labor, especially out there in, the wild, essentially, she wouldn't have made it. She would have died, and so would obviously those babies. And so it turned out Helen was right. She couldn't have those babies. Right? And so Helen came home. 3 weeks after that, she actually has a partner named Tom. And I was able to trap Tom and get him neutered and release him. That is about 4 years ago, I think that happened. And Tom and Helen, if I took this camera out there right now, they're sitting on their couch on the back porch. They are so in love. I've never seen two creatures so in love. And they are healthy. Well, they're kind of healthy. Tom has glaucoma and Helen has FIV. But they are well, and they are living really, really well. I mean, you look at Tom, and yeah, that kid, he's living well. He's got himself a nice tummy. Since he's lost a lot of his sight, Helen, even though I keep their bowl filled, Helen still hunts for him, and she brings him bugs, and she brings him mice even, because she wants to provide for him. And that was my first animal communication experience. And so what I want to tell you guys, and obviously I'm inviting you to my animal communication program that's going to be starting, the registration is open now, it's going to be starting in a few weeks, the last week in July. And it's going to be education, it's going to be coaching, and it's going to be activating. And if you love animals and this interests you at all, then you haven't uncovered, or let me digress. If you love animals and this interests you, and you don't yet feel like you have communicated with animals, or you don't know if you are doing it fluently or how to do it reliably, then all we have to do is tune you to it. All we have to do is help you to recover and remember it, take away some of those filters. A lot of that happens with context, with the education. Education is about help giving you the context to come out of the conditioning that held you from the awareness of what you actually truly know in your soul. That's why spiritual education feels so amazing, because you're just welcoming back to yourself a piece of yourself. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing the very first week. The first week, we're going to be talking, the whole theme of the first week of this 4-week program is connection. We're going to talk about what telepathy is. Telepathy is your first language. It is the language of nature and the universe. Pretty much only humans use spoken language. Almost humans, yeah. Sure, animals use some verbalized language, but it is not their primary language. They primarily are using the language of energy and spiritual connecting and energetic, subtle connecting. So we'll learn about that first language, and it is, like I said, the primary language of nature and the rest of the universe. We'll learn about the animal and nature perspective. It's important to understand what to expect and how to avoid projecting when you're connecting with animals. When we project, then we're actually limiting. When we project our own beliefs and expectations, then we limit ourselves from seeing and feeling and hearing the truth about that particular being. We'll learn about just how it works in general, what animals offer as language, as well as what they experience in communication with us. How it's different from other spiritual connection. We'll learn the distinction between connecting directly with an incarnated animal as opposed to, say, their higher selves, guides, and other types of psychic perception. And we'll talk about that as well, to be able to give it a full conversation and, like I say, around context. We're going to start practicing right away in that first week. The very first week, we will practice communicating with animals. I'll be coaching you. People want to know when the coaching will happen. It's going to be varied. If you have time to dedicate to the classes as well as the coaching, we're going to be able to make it, as long as you don't say, well, my 2 to 4 hours are from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm not going to be able to make that. I'll tell you that right now. So do only sign up if you are going to be able to dedicate and open yourself up to the timing. If you make yourself reasonably available, there will be coaching available to you. It will be happening in our private study Facebook group as well as on Zoom video call. It's going to be a lot of engagement. I'm super excited about it. So that's all I'm going to tell you right now. That is week 1. Again, hey animal and nature lovers. My 4-week animal communication, education, and coaching program is live. To learn more and register, go to triciacarrcharm.com/animal-communication. That again is triciacarrcharm.com/animal-communication. I'll see you there.